It might end up being one of the largest fields of presidential candidates ever.
Laney, nice to meet you. Jay?
Nearly 30 Democrats could be vying for the nomination, and their road to the White House runs straight through New Hampshire.
New Hampshire is a place where you get a chance to talk to people face to face, house to house, family to family.
The Granite State once again playing an outsized role in deciding a nominee because of our up-close and personal politics.
One of the things about New Hampshire is that people really want to, see the merchandise.
In 2020, the primary will serve to see who faces off against President Donald Trump, unless the president sees a challenger himself.
All the negativity, the victimization, all this stuff, it's not America that I know, and if I can be a voice to help bring that together, great.
From senators and representatives,
hey John,
are you running for president?
To governors, mayors, and political outsiders. 1 year out from the New Hampshire primary, these are the ones to watch.
Hello, I'm Adam Sexton. While it always seems like presidential campaigns start early, there is now less than a year for Granite Staters to figure out who will earn their vote in the first-in-the-nation primary. Competition is fierce in this historic field. This hour, we're taking a look at the long list of candidates who could end up on the ballot, from one-on-one interviews with those already visiting New Hampshire to analysis from campaign insiders on how to stand out. The voters who consider it their duty to ask their own questions, and a look at some of the dynamics in the field. We're giving you an in-depth view of how 2020 is already shaping up. But we begin with President Donald Trump and how his run in 2016 changed the way many view this process. Something to consider in this primary, the possibility that he may face a Republican challenger. But as many saw last time around, Trump's presence on the campaign trail is a political force that cannot be underestimated.
In the 2016 primary, Donald Trump wasn't necessarily the candidate Republican voters wanted. 64% of them cast ballots for someone else, from John Kasich to Ted Cruz to Jeb Bush. But Trump turned out to be exactly who Republicans needed to defeat Hillary Clinton. And over the last 4 years, he and the loyal supporters we first met during his campaign have redefined American politics.
If people are not going to do the right thing, okay, and you know you're right, you got to trounce on them.
But a new primary is on the horizon, just a year away, and Trump may face opposition from within his own party. Former Ohio Governor John Kasich has left the door wide open to making some kind of challenge to President Trump, and several prominent Republicans were on hand in Concord as he essentially told them to be ready for his next move.
My problem with the president is I can't remember a time in our country where our leaders divided us.
Kasich senior advisor Tom Rath says he expects Trump to face a contested primary.
Whether it's warranted or not, I believe there will be one at some level, and if it's going to happen anywhere, it will probably happen here.
First in on the Republican side could be Bill Weld, the former governor of Massachusetts. Weld, who was on the Libertarian ticket in 2016 with presidential candidate Gary Johnson, told WMUR he will make his plans known soon when he visits New Hampshire. Former Arizona Senator Jeff Flake has said he is not running, but current Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, who is expected to be in Iowa in March for a National Governors Association visit, hasn't ruled anything out. Former NHGOP Chair Jennifer Horn says Republicans need a primary to determine whether they're still the party of Lincoln or if they're now the party of Trump.
It's not just about we should primary Donald Trump. Primaries are good. They allow us the opportunity as a party to, discuss and debate those principles and those core values about who we are as a party.
Nearly a dozen current or former U.S. senators, including the ones you see here, are mulling a run for the White House. Among the declared candidates, Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. Warren has already held several events in New Hampshire and continues to take on President Trump. She's traded barbs with him on Twitter for years. She says her campaign will focus on helping average Americans succeed.
New Hampshire is a place where you get a chance to talk to people face to face, house to house, family to family, and a real opportunity to hammer through and say, not the noise, how are we really going to make change? I'm not a professional politician. I came to this very late. My life has been about just kind of this central question, and that is, what's happening to working people in this country? Why has the road gotten so rocky for so many families, and rockier still for families of color? That's what pulls me into this fight, is pushing on this and recognizing the decisions made in far-off Washington are decisions that time after time after time help the wealthy and the well-connected. They just don't help people across New Hampshire and people across this country. This is our chance to talk about that. Right now, Washington works great for giant drug companies, but not for people trying to get a prescription filled. Washington works great for companies that run private prisons, but not for communities of color and families that are being destroyed by the process. Washington works great for student loan outfits that make zillions of dollars, but not for young people who are trying to get an education. We need to call that out for what it is, corruption. And we need to make changes in Washington, not just change one law here or one law there, but big structural change so that our government works again, not just for the rich and the powerful, but works again for all the people.
Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York says she's running, and she has a connection to the Granite State already. She graduated from Dartmouth in 1988. She was just in New Hampshire, making several stops around the state, saying creating economic opportunity for the next generation is a top priority.
I'm running for president because I really believe that all of us are called to make a difference, and I feel like I have to fight for your kids as hard as I would fight for my own. And that's why we need to make sure health care is a right, not a privilege, better public schools, making sure anybody can earn their way into the middle class and live the American dream, and take on the battles that are necessary to make that happen. This is not a small moment in our history, and I believe all Americans have to understand and feel, if they don't feel what's right, they have to fight for what they believe in. And they have to fight for this democracy, restore the democracy to the people, take on the special interests and the greed and corruption that make everything impossible, and fight for health care as a right, and fight for better public schools and better job training so people can provide for their kids. It's really that simple. It's the basic things that matter in life.
Another senator officially in the race started visiting New Hampshire before the 2018 midterm elections. New Jersey's Cory Booker. Booker first gained national attention as the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, and says now is the time to change America. You just jumped into this race. Just share with us a little bit about what pushed you over the edge. Why do you want to be president of the United States?
All across this country, too many people are losing their faith in this nation's ability to solve our problems. People are feeling left out, left behind. And in fact, many people are believing that the forces tearing us apart as a nation are stronger than those forces that bind us together in common purpose. I don't believe that, and I'm running for president to challenge that, to change that, to show us that the lines that divide us are nowhere near as the ties that bind us, and that we as a nation more than ever have to pull together to address the unfinished business of America. I want this to be run on the people, be about the people, and so I'm looking forward to getting back to the kind of retail politics that got me into politics in the first place, putting my heart, my spirit, my energy and ideas before the people of New Hampshire and earning their respect, and eventually, God willing, or earning their votes.
It's safe to say New Hampshire is very important to your strategy.
Not just important, it's essential to our strategy so that we can, again, be a generation that gives to our children a nation better than we inherited, with more hope, more opportunity.
Several more senators are trying to make the leap from Capitol Hill to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Mike Cronin has a look at the Senate field, and Mike, it's a pretty big one.
That's right, Adam. The U.S. Senate produced the last Democratic president, Barack Obama, and as Democrats hope to retake the White House, these senators are looking to take advantage of their experience. Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar has just jumped into the 2020 primary field. She's in her third term and says the Democrats need voices from the Midwest this time around.
I don't have a political machine. I don't come from money. But what I do have is this. I have grit.
She joined Senator Kamala Harris of California, who has a strong background in law, as a district attorney and state attorney general. Harris announced her run for president on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, saying her upbringing and experience make her an ideal candidate.
My entire career has been focused on keeping people safe. It is probably one of the things that motivates me more than anything else.
Oregon's Jeff Merkley, one of the more progressive Democrats in the Senate, is no stranger to the Granite State in recent months. He's been critical of Republicans on a range of issues, including the GOP tax bill.
They borrowed $1.5 trillion from our children to give away to the richest Americans. That's not government of, by, and for the people.
Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown just visited the Granite State after traveling to Iowa on what he termed a dignity of work tour. Brown made a point of going to the city of Berlin during his first trip to New Hampshire this year.
New Hampshire matters. It's one of the very few states that matters, both in the primaries, obviously, as we know in this country, and in the general election. It's a swing state like Ohio is, with a lot of the same kinds of problems. I've not had this lifetime dream to be president of the United States, and since my reelection in November in Ohio, we began to think about, too many Democrats think that you choose between talking to your progressive base and talking to workers about their lives, and I think you don't win in New Hampshire or Ohio or a whole lot of swing states unless you do both. And that's who I am, fighting for workers and as a progressive, and what I think the message of the Democratic Party should be.
There has been speculation that Colorado Senator Michael Bennet is considering his own run, telling reporters at one point he is wondering if he can play a role in leadership that confronts the country's problems. In U.S. history, 16 senators have gone on to occupy the White House, including New Hampshire's Franklin Pierce.
Thanks, Mike. And the senator who won New Hampshire's Democratic primary in 2016 still has a very strong following. Coming up, what Senator Bernie Sanders getting into the race would mean with more progressives in the field this time around. Plus, potential contenders coming from every level of government, from congressional seats to the mayor's office. Our one-on-one conversations include one with former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who may be getting into this race as a Democrat. And what are voters looking for this time around? We'll hear from some of you and the party strategists trying to answer that question too.
People aren't in any rush to make their pick. They don't want to mess this one up.
Therefore, what we start here in New Hampshire today, I believe must succeed next summer and next November.
Our thanks and our joy goes out to you, the people of New Hampshire. This was the way I want to continue campaigning, meeting the people of this country as I was able to meet you, so many of you.
Oh, good to meet you.
Well, nice to see you.
I might even vote for you.
Well, good. Well, you got a year to think about it.
But I'm not going to guarantee that.